Erasure, the quiet form of alienation. When people imagine parental alienation, they often picture something obvious: hostility, arguments, harsh words, open rejection. But some of the most devastating forms of alienation are nearly silent. They do not explode, they fade, they do not attack directly. They remove. This is erasure, the quiet form of alienation. Erasure rarely arrives with confrontation. It does not need dramatic conflict. It operates through absence, through omission, through slow disappearance. A parent's name is mentioned less often. Photos quietly vanish from shelves. Stories stop being told. Memories lose their voice in the household. Nothing loud, nothing overtly cruel, just a gradual thinning of presence. And what makes erasure so psychologically powerful is that it does not feel like aggression. It feels like neutrality, like moving on, like not making a big deal out of things. But for a child, absence speaks loudly. Children are constantly forming their internal map of relationships. Who matters? Who belongs? Who is central? Who is peripheral? When one parent slowly disappears from daily language, imagery, and emotional conversation, the child absorbs that shift as meaning. Not because anyone explicitly said, "they don't matter," but because the environment quietly implied it. Erasure often looks like not mentioning the parent, not displaying reminders, not sharing updates, not encouraging connection, not protecting the bond. 1,000 small non-actions that collectively reshape emotional reality. Over time, the targeted parent becomes less psychologically vivid, less emotionally immediate, less present in the child's inner world. And children do not experience this as removal. They experience it as normalcy. Because children adapt to the emotional climate they live inside. They align with what feels stable, what feels reinforced, what feels safe. Erasure can be especially potent when paired with subtle narrative framing. If they cared, they'd be here more. They're busy. They've moved on. We don't talk about that. Not necessarily accusations, but interpretations, implications, explanations that slowly detach emotional significance. One of the most painful realities of erasure is that it is rarely recognized while it is happening. There is no single explosive event, no dramatic rupture, no obvious moment of alienation, only hindsight. Years later, the parent may look back and realize the photos were gone. The calls became awkward. The child stopped volunteering stories. Something had shifted, but there was no clear moment to point to. Erasure is devastating precisely because it is gradual. Like watching a figure fade from a photograph, so slowly you don't notice the loss until the image feels incomplete. For the targeted parent, this experience often creates deep confusion, because there may have been no major conflict, no catastrophic incident, no defining betrayal, just distance, subtle coolness, a growing sense of emotional unfamiliarity. Parents often ask, how did I become a stranger in my child's life? But erasure does not create strangers overnight. It creates them through accumulation. Less mention, less visibility, less emotional reinforcement, less shared space in the child's mental and emotional world. Children are not choosing erasure, they are adapting to it. Because children rely on their environment to signal what is important, safe, and central. If one parent becomes psychologically invisible within the dominant household, the child's attachment system gradually reorganizes around that absence. Not from cruelty, from conditioning. Erasure can also occur internally within the child in order to reduce cognitive dissonance, loyalty conflict, or emotional tension. The mind simplifies, the relationship becomes minimized, memories become blurred, emotional significance becomes muted. Not necessarily because love disappeared, but because remembering became complicated. For parents, this form of alienation carries a uniquely haunting quality, because it feels like vanishing without a crime, disappearing without confrontation, losing presence without a clear rupture. It is not just rejection, it is disappearance. And disappearance is profoundly destabilizing to the human heart. Parents experiencing erasure often struggle with self-doubt, unanswered questions, a sense of unreality, grief without closure. Because how do you process a loss that arrived without a single dramatic event? How do you explain a pain that unfolded through silence and absence? Healing begins with naming, because what remains invisible often continues wounding. Recognizing erasure for what it is does not require rage or blame. It simply allows clarity. Clarity that says, this was not imagined, this did not happen overnight. This was a slow psychological shift. And that clarity matters deeply, because without it, parents often default to, I must not have mattered. I must not have been important. I must have been easily forgotten. But erasure is not proof of insignificance. It is often the result of systemic dynamics, narrative imbalance, emotional influence, attachment restructuring. Not lack of love, not lack of value, sometimes the most painful wounds, are not caused by what was done, but by what was slowly removed. And sometimes healing begins, not by rewriting the past, but by understanding the forces that shaped it. Because disappearance is not the same as worthlessness, and silence is not the same as absence of love, even when it feels that way. If this resonates with your experience, if you've lived through the quiet confusion of feeling gradually erased from your child's world, please know you are not alone in this. If this video brought clarity or comfort, you're welcome to like and subscribe to Depth of the Quiet. You can listen quietly whenever your thoughts feel heavy, and return anytime you need a calm, understanding voice. If you feel safe sharing, you're always welcome to leave a comment below. No pressure, just support, at your pace. You are always welcome here.